At my grandson's birthday, he ripped open my gift and sneered, "This is worthless." His friends laughed while I forced a faint smile. But when he noticed what was hidden inside the box, his laughter vanished. His smile evaporated. If you are reading this, tell me where you are watching from. Your kitchen table? Your back porch under the evening sky? A bus seat with the windows fogged? Or a quiet corner in your room? Because I want you here with me as I open the door to a day that started with cake and ended with a silence that cut through the music. The house was loud. Balloons tapped the ceiling. Paper crowns slid over foreheads. The cake looked like a bright castle with golden sugar on its turrets, and my grandson, Ethan, stood in the middle of it all like a small king. I walked in with a simple box in my hands, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine the way his grandmother used to do it. "Grandpa brought something," a girl said, curious but already distracted by the pile of new gadgets on the side table. Ethan took the box from me with a grin that felt rehearsed, and before I could say anything, he tore the paper as if the paper had insulted him. Inside, he saw what I knew he would see first, an old brass compass in a small leather case, glass scratched, lid stiff from time. He lifted it with 2 fingers, made a face for his friends, and said, "This is worthless." The laugh that followed rose fast and bright, and I felt it pass through my chest like wind through a loose window. I forced a smile, not because it didn't hurt, but because sometimes the only way to protect your dignity is to hold your face still while your heart takes a breath. I did not look at my son right away. I already knew the shape of the expression he was wearing. He has learned the habit of a small smirk, a little curve kept in the corner of his mouth like a pen in a shirt pocket, something ready to pull out when the moment calls. When I did look, there it was. He stood with one hand on Ethan's shoulder and said, too casually, "Dad, you could have asked me." "You know what kids like these days?" I nodded once. The room kept humming. Someone turned the music up. The speakers cheered like a crowd at a game I didn't want to play. The daughter-in-law, her hair perfect, her nails tiny mirrors, leaned in toward my son and said in a voice light as a feather and sharp as a blade. I told him not to bring sentimental stuff. I placed the box down on a side table, gentle as if it were a sleeping bird, and stepped back, the way a man might step back from a door he has just closed behind him. There are moments when the present is too loud and you need to go to the past for air. My wife liked birthdays. Not the glitter kind, not the loud kind, but the ones that felt like gentle mornings. In our small kitchen with chipped blue tiles, she would bake a sponge cake and hum while it rose. Sunlight would spill in through the fig tree, and our little boy, now the man smirking in a glass villa, would climb on a chair to peer into the oven window. She would give him the job of blowing flour off her hands so the white cloud would float, and he would laugh like a creek over stones. We were not rich, but we had enough. Enough is the most beautiful word when you mean it. She made lists on tiny paper and tucked them into drawers. Milk, flour, candle wicks, check the plants. She lit the house from the inside with small kindnesses that never asked for thanks. When our son split his lip at 3, she pressed him to her shoulder and pressed me to her other shoulder. And in that family hug, I learned why painters draw halos. Some people carry light like a daily habit. Time does what it always does. It moves without asking permission. Our boy grew, his feet quick, his mouth quicker. He wanted rooms that shone. He liked the feel of marble under his shoes and the sound of certain names on his tongue. He married a woman who loves surfaces that reflect her. I do not say that to be cruel. We all have our ways to protect the soft places in us. He bought a big villa with glass walls and a lawn that looks like it never met a weed. The first time I walked in, he showed me the study and said it would be for his work. "Don't clutter it with your old books, Dad," he said with a little laugh that asked me to laugh too. I nodded and kept my boxes of books in a spare room with a view of the lake. He stopped asking about my days. I stopped offering them. We began to speak like weather reports, brief and without any warmth. Disrespect does not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it seeps in quietly, like damp in a wall. It showed up at first as small corrections in front of his friends. "Dad, not that fork," or "Old man, sit here." The kind of jokes that are only jokes for the one who is laughing. Then it got bigger. One afternoon there was a suitcase at the foot of my bed with my clothes folded inside, and a car outside with the engine running. "Dad, the villa's layout isn't safe for you," he said, kindly, like someone selling a comfortable lie. "We booked you a serviced place. It has everything you need." He stretched the word comfortable, like he had invented comfort and was letting me borrow it. I moved. I did not fight. Quiet is sometimes the only sound that won't be used against you. But I kept the keys he had given me, and he never asked for them back. He treats keys like metal. I treat them like stories. Back at the party, Ethan held the compass up like a stage prop and made a pirate joke. The other boys laughed and echoed him. It is easy to perform when your audience is your friends. My son watched me as if he expected me to get upset and make his evening complicated. I did not. I picked up a small plate with cake and ate it slowly. The cake was very sweet. The sugar tried to calm my heartbeat and almost succeeded. The daughter-in-law posed for pictures near the balloon arch, and I realized she had planned every angle in advance. Her dress matched the ribbon on the cake box. She knew about light and attention. I'm not against beauty. I am against forgetting what beauty is for. There is something I have not told you yet, and I will not tell the people in that room until the moment arranges itself like a bird landing on a branch. The compass was not the gift. The compass was the signpost on a road that began a long time ago, when my wife and I decided what we would leave behind besides photos and recipes. My wife loved small tools that help you find your way. "Even if you know where you are," she would say, tapping the compass on my palm, "it's good to remember you can still choose your direction." She wanted Ethan to learn that lesson when he turned 16. One gift to make him feel seen, and another to make him think. We saved in quiet ways. We made plans in notebooks with soft covers. We asked a lawyer questions. We wrote letters to the future. We folded all of it carefully and tucked it into a place a careless hand would miss. Last night, under the glow of a small lamp, I wrapped the brown paper, tied the twine, and placed the compass on top of a thin inner lid. Beneath that lid lay something flat and silent. I pressed the lid down until it fit snug, and then smoothed the paper like a father wiping crumbs from a child's chin. I slept well. If you have ever stood in a room while people laughed at you, and you chose not to answer, you know how heavy bravery can feel. The boys' friends drifted toward the pile of glossy boxes, comparing brand names and price tags as if reading them out loud made them bigger. "Top tier," one said, tapping a drone. "Beast," another said, patting a console. Ethan pushed my box toward the edge of the table with a lazy knuckle, as if distance could protect him from disappointment. I kept my place near the window where the air was cooler. The lake outside lay like a long blade of steel under the gray sky. When Ethan was a baby, his grandmother would push his stroller along that lake while the birds were still practicing their morning songs. She would come home and tell me, "He watched a fish ripple the water and didn't even blink," and then she would laugh at how serious the very young can be. I blinked now, once, slowly, and made my expression smooth. My son tried to catch my eye again, curious in the way a cat is curious when the box doesn't move the way a box should. "You okay, Dad?" he asked in a voice meant for strangers. "Of course," I said. I used the flat voice that gives nothing away. He doesn't like that voice. He prefers the old father who explained everything, who softened bad news, who made room for his clumsy decisions. That father left when my wife did. The man who remained is a quieter shape with steady hands. "Next time," he added, glancing at the compass in its case, "just transfer some money. He can pick what he wants." I looked at him, and a slow smile found the corner of my mouth. Not kindness, not sarcasm, something colder. I said nothing. He shifted his weight and looked away first. The daughter-in-law glided over, smelling like a flower that blooms at night. "We're going to do the real," she said, lifting her phone without waiting for my answer. "Ethan, hold the cool gifts, the ones people want to see." She didn't look at the compass. She didn't look at me. She loved the idea of a story, but only the parts that shine where the light hits. She counted down aloud, then smiled at the camera with all her teeth. The guests clapped at nothing in particular. I ate another small bite of cake. The sugar had nowhere left to go. One of the boys' fathers came over and tried to be kind in that complicated way where kindness wears a mask. "Nice to see something classic," he said, nodding at the compass. "Old school." I looked at the man, and then at his son, whose eyes never left the drone. I do not blame the boys. Children copy what we praise. We have all been teaching them to praise price tags as if numbers were value. I put a hand on the box, only to keep it from falling off the table. The twine's roughness felt like a memory of rope burns from afternoons long ago when I taught my boy knots because knots were useful. He preferred tricks. Tricks get applause. Knots keep boats from floating away. Once, years back, I told my son how I got lost on a walk in the hills when I was 16. The fog came in. The path vanished. The compass saved me from circling back to the same stone over and over. He laughed then and said, "Dad, your stories always have a moral." I told him that the earth does not care if you like morals or not. North is still north. He said GPS is faster, and he was not wrong. But speed is not the same as wisdom. In the party room, under the bright lights, I picked up the compass and turned the little case so the needle settled. "It still points north," I said softly, not to argue, just to remind the air that some things still work the way they always did. Ethan rolled his eyes. "Grandpa wants me to be a pirate," he said, and his friends laughed again, softer now. A laugh that checked the room to see if it should keep going. If you were standing next to me then, you would have seen it. The moment when the laughter lost a bit of its heat. Not because anyone had changed their mind, but because the room had started to feel the weight of something it couldn't name. People sense a storm, even when the sky looks the same. I watched my son's hand tighten on his glass. I watched the daughter-in-law check her phone like a lifeline. I watched Ethan toss my box farther along the table, away from the good gifts, toward the napkins and the plastic forks. It bumped against a bowl of candy and stopped, the way a small boat bumps a dock and waits. I kept my hands at my sides. The knife came out for the cake. Candles were lit. Ethan closed his eyes and made a wish. I wondered if he wished for more of what he already had or for something he could not yet name. I wished quietly that he would learn to see things before someone else pointed a camera at them. He blew hard. The flames went down. Everyone cheered because that is what people do for flames that go down. He cut uneven slices. I love the unevenness. A plate came to me, and I took it, and I said, "Thank you," to the girl who carried it like it mattered. Small courtesies are not small. They hold the room together like stitches. The daughter-in-law asked my son if I would mind taking a photo with Ethan away from the setup, as if I were a stain that might show up on the best background. "We'll do grandpa shots outside," she said, and smiled at me as though she were letting me in on a secret favor. I walked with Ethan to the window so the lake would sit behind us like a quiet witness. He leaned in only as much as he had to. "Smile," she said. I did, the way you smile for a passport photo because the picture is a formality and not a memory. When she was happy with the result, she returned to her reel. Ethan slipped from my side back into the crowd where the loudest voices live. I picked up the box again and turned it in my hands as if I were only checking the wrapping. The twine was a little frayed. The brown paper had a thumbprint where Ethan first grabbed it. On the inside, under the thin lid, a sealed envelope lay flat. If I had lifted the inner lid then, I could have ended the party in a different kind of silence. But I did not reach for it. Lessons taught in anger stain the memory. My wife believed that. She asked me years ago to let the boy find his way to the truth, not drag him there. "Let the compass be the first thing he sees," she said. "Let him look down on it if he must. He'll look again when his eyes are ready." She was a patient teacher. I'm trying to honor that. There was a time after she died when I woke each day to the shape of her absence and thought I had nothing left to give but stories. Then I opened one of her little notebooks and found a list with my name at the top and 3 words beside it. Teach with quiet. Below that, another line, Ethan, teach with consequences, not punishments, consequences. The kind that arrive not with shouting but with a door that opens or does not, a paper that has your name on it or does not. We met a lawyer. We asked questions. We used our savings not to buy better tiles but to build something stronger than marble. That is what lay under the thin lid, pressed like a dry leaf between the pages of a heavy book. I kept my hand steady. "Dad," my son said, coming close again. His voice lowered now as if he had decided that a joke left too long on the counter might spoil. "Next time, just ask us." We could have told you exactly what to get. I looked at him for a long moment. I know what I brought, I said in a flat voice. He frowned, because people like him do not enjoy talking to a wall that looks back. The daughter-in-law glanced over, saw us not smiling, and floated in to sprinkle talk like sugar. Let's not make a thing, she said. It's a party. She touched my elbow for a second, and then let go, as if even that brief contact might smudge her sleeve. Ethan and his friends gathered in a circle on the rug to compare features of their gifts. He set the compass case on the floor behind him, near the heel of his sneaker, the way a child sets down a rock he thinks he will never need again. I watched from the window. I remembered my wife showing Ethan how to spot a bird by watching the leaves instead of the sky. Look for what moves when there is no wind, she'd said. In the room there was no wind, but small movements told me everything. The way my son's jaw worked when he thought he understood me. The way the daughter-in-law checked the door as if measuring her exit. The way Ethan's fingers twitched when he realized that one of his friends had the next expensive thing he would soon want. Want is a busy animal. It never rests unless you teach it. I will not pretend that I did not feel anger. It came in hot, like a coal in the throat, but it burned clean and turned into something else, a kind of cool resolve that made my hands steady and my words short. Not today, Ethan, I said in my head, when I saw his showman grin turning toward me, hungry for another laugh at the old man's oddities. You'd be in the way. He looked past me and found a new target. I let the room be what it wanted to be for a little longer. The music rose and fell. The lake stayed metal gray. The candle smoke curled like question marks that did not need answers. I set the box squarely on the table, made sure it was not too close to the edge, and waited with the patience of a man who knows where north is, even when everyone else insists the map is upside down. The room changed in a way you could feel more than see, like the air had been stirred by an invisible hand. The music still played, but softer. The chatter still buzzed, but slower. Maybe it was the candle smoke curling into a thin gray question above the cake, or the way the boys' laughter lost its echo. Maybe it was the look that passed from guest to guest. The look people get when they sense a story is turning and they don't want to miss the next line. I stepped nearer to the table and rested my fingertips on the box as if taking a pulse. Perhaps, I said in a voice so flat it didn't ripple, you didn't look carefully. The words did not ask. They simply existed. Ethan heard them and tried to shrug them off, but the shrug got stuck halfway. A boy beside him smirked and said, "What else is there, Grandpa? A treasure map?" His joke fell at his feet and did not bounce. The daughter-in-law turned her head without moving her shoulders, a slow, wary tilt, like a dancer checking her mark. My son tightened his grip on his glass. The ice clicked against the side. The lake behind the glass doors held its pewter stillness, and the balloon string near the ceiling trembled for no reason at all. Ethan made a show of being bored, but his hands betrayed him. He dragged the box back and flipped the compass case open, then closed, then open again, as if repetition would prove me wrong. The old leather creaked. He poked at the inner cardboard and frowned when it didn't move. "There's nothing else," he said, too loud for the words to sound honest. "Lift the lid," I said. Not a command, not a plea, just a direction, the kind you give someone at a crossroads. For a second he stared at the seam between the top tray and the box's belly, as if the idea of a second layer was an insult. Then curiosity, which is older than pride, reached up and tugged his sleeve. He hooked a fingernail under the thin edge and pried. The lid lifted with a soft sigh, and the room leaned in without taking a step. Underneath lay a sealed envelope, thick and heavy. My wife's tiny habit lived on its face, a careful line of initials in blue ink, the loop of the E like a small wave. Ethan touched the seal and flinched. The paper felt colder than it should. "Open it," I said, and this time the words were almost gentle. He slid a finger under the flap and tore it in a crooked line. A bank letter slid out first, the kind with numbers that make other numbers possible. Beneath it, a document with a formal blue border, and beneath that, a handwritten note on cream paper that looked like the soft skin inside a shell. He read the top of the bank letter, and his mouth opened for laughter that didn't arrive. He read the heading on the blue-bordered paper, Certificate of Trust, and his eyebrows lifted like small doors. He looked at the handwritten note last, the way a child saves the smallest sweet for the very end. He saw her first line, "To my dear Ethan, on your 16th birthday," and the sound he made was not a laugh and not a word. It was the sound of a boy remembering that once he was a baby and a woman loved him so openly, the world around them went quiet for a while. His friends fell back into a loose ring, unsure whether to press in or look away. A mother near the arch of balloons held her breath and forgot to let it go. My son set his glass down with care, as if the table might be listening. The daughter-in-law took a half-step forward and stopped, her eyes moving not over her son's face but over the edges of the papers, measuring them like fabric. The blue-bordered page shook in Ethan's hand. "What is this?" he asked, and the question arrived without the chill he had wrapped around his earlier words. Not contempt, not performance. Just a boy asking because he didn't know. I waited. I wanted him to say it again. He did. "Grandpa, what is this?" "It's direction," I said, "and a promise." I took the certificate from him and held it so the light did not glare. "This is a living trust your grandmother and I created. It holds the title to this villa, the Lake Cottage, and some accounts that have been fed by small, patient savings and by work nobody here ever posted about." I did not raise my voice. A flat tone is a true blade. Your father has had the use of this house under a license, a permission, not ownership. He knows this. I let my eyes rest on my son long enough to feel his smirk slide away from him like a bad coat. "The license is revocable. That means it can be taken back." I turned the page. Legal language sat there dry as bone, strong as it needed to be. "When your grandmother was ill, we moved the house and the accounts into the trust to protect them from noise and from hurry. We named a beneficiary for the future." I looked at the boy, my grandson, the same child whose fingers once curled around my thumb like a new vine around a stake. "We named you." The daughter-in-law found her voice first, a quick whisper meant to sound like a laugh. "You must be joking," she said, and the last word tried to smile, but it didn't have the strength for it. My son's mouth opened, then closed. He looked straight at me for the first time in months. His eyes were the gray of the lake on a day when the fish won't rise. "Dad," he said, and that one syllable carried a whole winter in it. I nodded, patient as a gate in a fence. "Read your grandmother's note," I told Ethan, and handed the cream paper back. He read, and his lips moved as if he knew that speaking the words would bring her closer. "My darling boy," she had written in the small, round hand that made grocery lists look like invitations. "If you are reading this, you have turned 16. You are taller, I'm sure, and clever, and you can break your grandfather's heart and mend it in the same afternoon without trying." A tremor flickered across his mouth. "This note is a key. The trust your grandfather is showing you makes you a future owner. Future means later. Between now and later there is a path. It is made of respect, which you will learn by practicing it, and of service, which you will learn by giving it, and of humility, which you will learn by looking up at the stars and remembering you are not the one who hung them." He blinked. One of his friends took a step back and stared at the floor. "If you treat your elders with kindness, if you keep your studies in good order, if you give 2 afternoons a month to the little library by the lake where the old men read the papers and the children need help with sums, then on your 18th birthday, the house will begin to be yours in pieces, like bread you do not rush to swallow. If you mock what matters or make pride your best friend, the trust waits. It does not shout. It simply waits until you are ready, even if that takes a long time. I love you always. Count North." "Nana." He reached the last word and could not say it. He pressed his lips tight, as if to stop something soft from escaping. "Still worthless?" I asked, not cruel, simply checking our bearings. The question hung in the room like a bell whose echo chooses its own direction. Ethan shook his head. No words came. The boy who had waved a compass like a toy now held a letter like it was a glass bird. His friends' faces changed in small ways. A mouth closed, a chin lifted, a laugh died in the throat. The daughter-in-law looked as if she had been made to stand on a scale that had its own ideas. My son rubbed his forehead as if something heavy sat behind it and had decided to wake up. I did not move. I did not raise a hand for hush or make a speech. I let the silence do its work. Silence has excellent hands. "Dad," my son started again, and then he stopped, because what he had been about to say no longer fit the room. He looked at the blue page. You kept this from me. I considered the word kept. It can be tender or bitter. It depends on who holds it. Yes, I said. Your mother asked me to keep it safe from hurry. She knew what hurry does to people. I glanced at the study door he had once told me not to clutter. We planned for years. We did not hide it to hurt you. We built it to protect a value you call sentimental, and we call ours. I let a thin, slow smile cross my face. Not anger, something colder. And we made sure the keys would be in the right pockets when the time came. The daughter-in-law reached for the bank letter, then thought better, and drew her hand back as if the paper might bite. So what happens now? She asked, and the shape of the question told me she was moving pieces on a board she had not known existed. Now, I said, your son decides what kind of man he wishes to become, and you and mine decide whether you can live with courtesy in a house that is not yours to command. I looked at my son because a father should look at his child when he says hard things. The license stands if the respect stands. I'm not moving back to the service place unless I want to. My books will go to the study I was told not to clutter. If words like old man or gestures with hands on backs make a return, the license evaporates in 30 days. You know I am not bluffing. Your mother did not raise a man who bluffs. He swallowed. His throat moved like someone had set a small stone on it. Understood, he said. The word had no smirk to sit on. It had to stand on its own feet. I turned to Ethan. He looked smaller and larger at once, like a boy on the edge of a map. I lifted the compass and clicked the case open. The needle swam, then settled. I held it so he could see it clearly. North is not a place, I said. It's a decision you make again and again. He nodded without breaking the spell of the needle's quiet insistence. You can leave the compass in the box if you like, I said. It will still point where it points. Or you can put it in your pocket so your hand can find it when your mouth wants to move too fast. He slipped it into his pocket with care I had not seen from him all afternoon. Nana wrote the library thing, he said, and his voice was a rougher version of the boy I had known. I'll do it. Good, I said. They need someone to carry the paper stacks to the old men who won't ask for help, and someone to show the little ones that numbers are friends. He gave one of those small, almost invisible nods that say a promise has been made in a language older than words. The guests, unsure as ducks in a sudden wind, looked to the birthday boy for their next cue. Ethan took a breath and turned toward them. He cleared his throat, then did it again in a way that made me proud for no good reason. Hey, he said, and the word cracked a little. I said something stupid before. I'm sorry. It was not eloquent. It was not a speech. It was better than both. He lifted the letter without showing it and added, My grandma, she wrote me something. I should have looked before I laughed. He turned back to me. Grandpa, thank you. The room made a collective movement that was not quite a sigh and not quite applause. One of the boys who had laughed loudest stared at his shoes like they had begun to teach him a lesson. A mother near the arch reached for a napkin and dabbed her eye. The daughter-in-law rearranged her face into something like relief. It didn't quite fit yet, like a dress worn before it has been tailored. My son stepped toward me with his hand half raised. He held it there, unsure, then let it fall. I should have defended you, he said, and for a thin second the man I had raised came to the front of his eyes. Yes, I said. You should have. The sentence landed gently and did not break anything it did not need to. We cut more cake because cake is a good way to keep hands busy while hearts move furniture. Ethan brought me a slice he had cut with care. The edge was neater. He had tried. He stood beside me for a while and did not speak, which was the right kind of company. When he did speak, he asked, Can I keep the letter with me? That is what letters are for, I said. He put it back into the envelope as if it were a wing, and he did not want to crease it. He slipped the bank letter and the blue bordered page back into the box and closed the lid with a slow finality. He set the box by my chair and rested his palm on it for a second, a gesture like a pledge. My son watched his boy with an expression that made me think of our kitchen long ago, of flour on noses, and a woman laughing like the afternoon had decided to sit down with us and stay. I did not make any speeches about money or houses or punishments. I called the house manager from the hallway and quietly asked him to have my boxes of books brought back from the serviced place tomorrow morning and placed in the study. On the low shelves, I said, where a boy might reach without asking. He nodded. I sent a short message to the lawyer to say that the envelope had been opened and the note had done its work. He replied with a single word, noted. I smiled at the economy. I returned to the room and let the party be a party again, a little humbler, a little more human, as if someone had opened a window and let ordinary air in. Later, near the window, Ethan came to stand with me and looked out at the lake. The light had slipped from pewter to a softer tin. The poplars were dark lines drawn by a careful hand. "Do you really think I can change?" he asked, not as a plea for praise, but as a boy asking for a map. "Everyone changes," I said. "Some on purpose." He turned the compass in his pocket with his fingers and said, "I think Nana wanted me to do it on purpose." "She rarely wanted anything by accident," I said, and we both smiled. He told me he would go to the library the next Saturday. I told him I would walk him there the first time and then he could walk others after that. He said okay, in a voice that had more weight than the word usually carries. As guests left in pairs and trios, they squeezed my arm with a warmth they had not offered earlier. The father who had said old school murmured, "I had a compass as a kid." I don't know where it went. I thought I knew. He nodded to himself as if he had heard me answer. The daughter-in-law, to her credit, came to me at last, her face losing some of its mirror brightness. "We plan too much," she said. "I forgot some things can be simple." "Simple is not the same as easy," I said, "but it's kinder to live with." She considered that and for once did not reach for her phone to save it as a caption. My son stood with his hands in his pockets like a boy in trouble at school and said, "I'll fix what I can." "Start with please and thank you," I said. "They open more doors than keys." He nodded, and I saw that he meant it, at least for tonight. Tomorrow would ask its own questions. We would answer them then. When the house settled into its late light, I sat by the window and let my bones rest. Ethan's envelope lay on the table, the compass case beside it. I held the compass one more time and watched the needle do its small, faithful dance. I remembered my wife's last birthday, how she had made me a cake, thin layers with lemon between, and written in icing, "Enough is a feast." She had kissed the flower off my cheek and whispered, "Teach with quiet." I looked around at the room that had tried to be louder than love and failed. Justice had not roared. It had whispered. It did not throw anyone out into the dark. It opened a door and let a little boy step toward the person his grandmother imagined when she wrote his name in blue ink on a cream page. Families should not sneer at gifts. They should treasure the hands that give them and the hearts that tie string around brown paper, because a woman once did it that way, and it made the room kinder. A house is not marble and glass. It is promises kept. A birthday is not a pile of boxes. It is the moment a child remembers who is watching him and why. I gathered the box and the compass and the letter and stood up. "Come on," I said to Ethan. "Walk me to the door." He did, and he did not rush. And when we reached the door, he turned to his friends and said, "I'll be back in a minute." It was a small sentence, but it had north in it. We stepped out under a pale sky, and the lake gave us back our shapes as if to say, "Here you are." Keep going. If this story moved you even a little, tap like. Share it with someone who needs a quiet kind of justice today. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this journey.